Gordon Smithfield and Jeff Scarborough joined the Marine Corps with the intention of seeing the world. After their service, both men moved to Chicago and joined the city's police department. Unbeknownst to the public, the Chicago Police Department had secretly formed a group of officers called the Devil Catchers to hunt down and apprehend members of an organization known as Devil Inc., which consisted of sadistic serial killers. The first book in this series is titled Meet the Killer. Gordon Smithfield waved through heavy traffic as the rain poured down relentlessly. The downpour had intensified, making it difficult for him to see the road ahead. Despite his windshield wipers working at top speed, visibility remained a significant challenge. The storm had caused some streetlights to go out, enveloping certain sections of the street in darkness. Gordon had driven this route countless times, enabling him to navigate with ease, almost as if he could do it with his eyes closed. And, as fate would have it, that's precisely what he did. When Smithfield finally turned onto the street, he was met with the sight of hundreds of police officers standing outside in the pouring rain. They were wearing black, police-issued raincoats with hoodies, fully prepared to brave the elements. Director of the Department of Investigation, Joan Walsh, was already on the scene when Smithfield arrived. The murder of Smithfield's best friend's wife, Rachel Scarborough, was about to trigger an unprecedented manhunt in Chicago. As Smithfield entered the living room, he noticed Director Walsh staring down at Rachel's dismembered body. Her face had been divided into 8x8 squares and triangles, carefully arranged within a stainless steel frame. This gruesome display was the signature of the sadistic killer who had terrorized Chicago for the past 4 summers, with many of the murders occurring in Lincoln Park and the West Loop communities. Now, with Rachel becoming the 15th victim, the urgency to catch the killer had reached a critical point. Many of the murders had taken place in Lincoln Park and the West Loop communities. Tara, whom Smithfield greeted with a weary tone, had seen similar crime scenes before, including the same stainless steel picture frame. Smithfield knew that the frames were too common to provide any significant leads. Instead, he focused on investigating the victims' lives during the 2 weeks leading up to their deaths. There were no signs of forced entry or struggle at any of the crime scenes, and the only individuals present were the victims' spouses. The police had verified each spouse's alibi, but there were no other suspects. For the past 4 years, hundreds of agents and forensic teams had meticulously combed through every crime scene, yet they had found nothing. The killer's cunning ability to leave behind no trace or evidence had baffled investigators, leading them to a frustrating dead end. The Picasso killer exhibited a disturbing perversion in the way he treated his victims. His modus operandi involved leaving behind a signature, writing the name of one of Picasso's famous masterpieces next to each victim. As a result, the press had given him the moniker Picasso Killer. On this occasion, beside Rachel's lifeless body, he had written The Weeping Woman, adding to the horror of the crime scene. Lost in thought, Smithfield found himself reminiscing about how they had stumbled upon the existence of Devil Inc. In the last couple of years, his team, along with Scarborough's group, had successfully eliminated 8 members of Devil Inc. Their mission had become evident. The CPD's objective was not to apprehend them alive but to neutralize the dangerous organization. However, Tara's voice snapped Smithfield back to reality, reminding him that they still had a crime to solve in the present moment. As Smithfield looked up, 2 well-dressed men entered the living room with a purposeful demeanor. They moved around the room, inspecting magazines as if searching for something. Despite the gruesome scene, the room was immaculate, with every piece of furniture in place, including Rachel's body. Strangely, neither man displayed any emotion, appearing completely undisturbed. Smithfield quickly realized that the 2 agents were unknowingly contaminating his team's trace evidence, so he promptly instructed a young woman named Susie, who was dressed in a white crime tech jacket, to provide the agents with cotton totes to cover their shoes. As both agents complied and put on the totes, Agent Booth took the lead and began questioning Smithfield about Rachel, trying to ascertain if she had any connection to the ongoing case. Smithfield explained that Rachel had grown up with them in Freeport and had been Scarborough High School sweetheart, before getting married 3 years ago. While Smithfield and Scarborough went on to join the military, Rachel chose a different path and moved to Chicago. There, she pursued an economics degree and worked for a local hedge fund. The room fell into a focused silence as the agents meticulously gathered information and continued their investigation. Tara watched closely, observing the distinct dynamics between the poised Agent Booth and the streetwise Agent Macaulay, while Susie and other members of Smithfield's team diligently worked to preserve any potential evidence. The hunt for the Picasso killer had just taken an intriguing turn with the arrival of these federal agents, and everyone knew they needed to work together to solve the case and bring justice to the victims. Smithfield described Rachel as a beautiful person and whispered a heartfelt eulogy for her. He then led both agents into the hallway, instructing a lab tech to swiftly remove the body before Jeff Scarborough arrived. It was at that moment that Smithfield realized the entire crime tech team consisted of women. Apologizing for not introducing himself earlier, he identified himself as investigator Gordon Smithfield. Both agents acknowledged his introduction, and he proceeded to provide them with an overview of the case. Although both Booth and Macaulay had read the case files, they sought a local perspective on the Picasso killer, which brought them to collaborate with the Chicago Police Department. Macaulay inquired whether the CPD had requested their help, and Smithfield confirmed it, mentioning they already had a complete file on the killer. Macaulay revealed that the Bureau believed the killer of Mrs. Scarborough to be an active member of Devil Inc. and a leader within the organization's High Council. He speculated that the killer might have targeted Mrs. Scarborough due to Smithfield and Scarborough's success in capturing Devil Inc. members, making them a threat to the organization. Smithfield considered the suggestion and asserted that if the Picasso killer wanted them off the case, he had miscalculated. They were more determined than ever to bring him to justice. The three men then began sharing information, combining their resources and expertise to put an end to the Picasso killer's reign of terror and provide closure for the victims' families. The collaboration between local investigators and federal agents brought hope for progress in solving the case. Tara walked out to the hallway where all three men stood, exchanging notes. She stopped Booth dead in the middle of his sentence. Scarborough is in the apartment. He came in through the back door. Smithfield, you better get your ass in there now. Jeff walked into the apartment expecting to find a crime scene, but to his surprise and that of the agents, the house was unusually clean. Despite both agents witnessing the removal of 5 large black body bags and several evidence bags, they had never seen one tech with a mop or broom. There were no blood splatters anywhere, no signs of a struggle, and no trace of the victim. It felt like a cruel joke, and both Booth and Macaulay struggled to envision the apartment as a crime scene, even though they had witnessed it with their own eyes. Smithfield reassured Jeff that this was indeed the work of the Picasso killer. Jeff wandered around the room as if it was his first time there, his eyes wide with disbelief. Slowly, he made his way into the kitchen, holding on to the hope that he might find Rachel sitting at the kitchen table, as if nothing had happened. However, Jeff still hadn't noticed the presence of the 2 FBI agents. Having always lived with a tortured soul, Scarborough now appeared as if he had lost his very essence. He shared with Smithfield and Joan that he felt like someone had drained life out of his body. His desire for justice was immense, a thirst for biblical retribution against the one responsible for Rachel's horrifying fate. Booth motioned for Smithfield to join them, saying, "We're headed back to the field office. Macaulay will be your direct contact with the Bureau. But don't worry, I'm always available if you need anything." Smithfield nodded in agreement, appreciating the support and collaboration with the federal agents in this challenging case. That night, Chicago was bustling with people as the Taste of Chicago event reached its peak. An additional 400,000 visitors crowded the already bustling city. The Hugo Frog Bar, known for attracting wealthy older men and young women, was a hotspot in the area commonly referred to as the Viagra Triangle due to the prevalence of such couples. The bar often hosted groups of attractive women who stayed briefly for a quick drink, catching the attention of older men seeking companionship. However, on this particular night, there was a solitary woman seated at the end of the bar, sipping a dry martini. Despite not exuding arrogance or entitlement, she possessed an air of wealth and refinement that was hard to ignore. Men and women approached her, offering to buy her a drink, but her response was always the same. Politely declining, she explained, "Please forgive me, but I don't drink with strangers. It's a dangerous world." She refocused her attention on the TV screen above the bar, where breaking news about the murder of Rachel Scarborough was being reported. Rachel was the wife of a well-known young private investigator named Jeff Scarborough, an expert in criminal tracking. The news also mentioned Gordon Smithfield, Jeff's partner, who had just celebrated his 35th birthday. The bar patrons watched the coverage of Rachel's tragic death. The report mentioned a disturbing rise in gun purchases by both single and married women, driven by fear of the infamous Picasso killer. This killer utilized a neurotoxin to incapacitate his victims, rendering them unable to move while they endured the unspeakable horror of being dismembered alive. The chief coroner revealed that most victims would have succumbed to cardiac arrest 6 minutes into the ordeal, but 6 minutes were far too long to endure such agony. As the newscast ended, Mike the bartender muted the volume and turned toward the woman, only to discover she had quietly left. However, she had left a generous $100 bill for a single drink. The enigmatic woman's presence and sudden departure left an aura of mystery lingering in the bar, as the Picasso killer's reign of terror continued to haunt the city of Chicago. It's very important that you smash that like button. It's also important to note that this story is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to real-life events or individuals is purely coincidental. The names of some places may be real, but the narrative surrounding them is entirely fictional. This story is a product of the writer's imagination and is intended to remain within the realm of fiction. It is also important to smash that like button. Smash it now.